But I think ultimately it comes down to using different mediums that you generally would use as a human being to express yourself as a part of your strategy when speaking. Because again, you want to feel most like yourself while you're there. And you want to eliminate trying to be a speaker as much as you can.
Welcome to the podcast that helps speakers and writers like you grow their impact and income. This is Stage, Page, and Screen. One of the things that's intrigued me about you is kind of watching you struggle to articulate your brilliance and uniqueness. You know exactly what it is that you do. People experience what it is that you do and go, oh, that was really great and really fresh. But I've kind of watched you struggle on the marketing side of things of like, how is it that I articulate to people this unique thing that I do as a speaker? Can you talk through how you think of that and how you, sort of the different iterations of how you have pitched and marketed what you do?
Yeah, you nailed it. I definitely struggle with marketing myself, which I think a lot of speakers or entrepreneurs, this is a very common struggle. I can't even tell you how many marketing campaigns for other people, brands, organizations, products, ideas. And it comes to me, I think, in framework. So it's very easy for me. If I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be in marketing or advertising. I absolutely love wordplay. I love the color tones, everything. But for myself, I think it stems from having a personal attachment and not wanting to misrepresent myself or be misunderstood, or this might not sound appropriate, but sell out, play the game. I want to stay authentic and true to myself. So I feel like I do that really well with other people, but I get very nervous in understanding how to do that for myself. And then I want to appease other people. So then I start going in lanes that I shouldn't be going in. And so my brand gets a little colluded with other people's voices and ideas, because then I get into pleasing mode as opposed to staying authentic and true to what I want to say and how I want to do it. And the flip side of all of this is with what I do, it isn't a traditional speaking or lecture keynote. And because there isn't a lane already carved out, it's very difficult to use words that a client would understand in order to explain what the experience is that they'll have bringing me in. There aren't many reference points for what I do in the field.
So how have you worked through that? I mean, if a potential client has already seen you, even if they themselves couldn't articulate it to someone else, they get it. They're like, I don't know exactly how to explain it in a tight sentence, but what she does is exactly what our students need or what our staff needs. But if you were in a situation, we're representing you now, so we're having a lot of these kind of on the phone conversations with folks. But if you were in those sorts of conversations, as you are occasionally, and someone was like, well, give me a sentence to explain to the board or the conference committee what you do. Do you feel like you've landed at what that is yet?
As of this week, I am calling it the experience exchange.
All right, well, come on.
As of this week.
All right, we got a new one every week, huh?
Yeah, so it's not about speaking. It's about the interaction and the reaching. So the experience. So ultimately, an experience is more effective long-term than anything I say. So what I do is I activate an exchange of experiences in my events. So the biggest words I can use are interactive, highly engaging, and where there is an opportunity for people to connect with whoever their peers are around them. And ultimately, in the past, I used to say, you just have to be there and like experience it.
Yes.
To like understand and get it, And now I'm focusing more on just the words of interaction and engagement. And obviously showing through video is very helpful. That's probably the number one way a client will feel confident in using an alternative speaker style is by seeing a video, and not a video of all of it, but just getting a video of the interaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about how you are truly carving out a category of one where, there's not going to be a multitude of choices. It's like you are the individual that pioneered this thing. But in pioneering, the pioneering is the extraordinarily difficult part. Are there times that you go, well, screw this. Maybe I should just market myself as a traditional speaker until I figure out what this language is? Why do you have this commitment to this particular style, this interactive, experiential style that you do so well?
I've just seen the impact. I've experienced the impact for myself. I started doing it because I thought I'd be boring if I talked. If I'm honest, I didn't want to do anything I would be bored watching. So I never watched other speakers. This may be contrary to like what we're advised to do. Never wanted to pick up another style. I just was like, how can I authentically be myself in front of these people? And that's by spitting spoken word poetry. That's by being very engaging, kind of shifting the focus off of me and onto them so that I can understand what it is they need. Because part of my education has been being able to, I feel entrusted with the audience. So I'm trying to understand what it is they need in real time. And I can't understand that if I'm not interacting with them and getting their thoughts, their feelings, their feedback. So that's also why I do the activities now. But at first it was because I didn't want to be boring. I wanted to do something I would enjoy. And also through time, I was seeing how overwhelmingly effective it was. It was just bar to none. Anything I ever said, even the poetry I did, all of it, I actually used to survey it. My master's thesis was surveying what different mediums of communication the audience responded most to. And it was the interactive pieces. And at the time, I surveyed things like polling and the poetry and the stories, and everything always boiled down to the experience they had interacting with each other.
I mean, it's anxiety-inducing for me as someone who's like a highly anxious person, like a controlling personality. I go, oh my gosh, how can you leave so much up to chance like this? So talk me through it, if I followed you to a university in Dallas and then a couple of days later to Des Moines, what percentage of those two presentations to a very similar audience are kind of, the scripted traditional speaking style versus the interactive, who knows what might come of this? It's going to depend on what the student says, what their question is. Are we talking like 30% scripted, 70% improvised? What are we talking here? And I'll just kind of be over here twitching as you tell me the percentages.
I would say 20% is, drumroll please, scripted.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
And 80% is interacting with the audience.
So the 20% scripted, do you tend to put that towards the beginning? Because is the thinking, okay, here's something scripted that I know works really well. This is a good way to hook them. Or is that more so in the middle or towards the end? So
basically, this is shameful to admit, but we're being honest on the stage, page, and screen. So almost every time I get either a hotel paper sheet that they leave near my bed or a napkin from a local coffee shop. And once I'm there and once I'm kind of speak again to the coordinators, get more information on maybe what's happening in that week, I then do a little bulleted list. Literally, I have like 5 bullets, and I have my intro section, my middle section, my conclusion. So all of my programming is broken into 3 different parts, which the framework of that is self, social / relational, and community. And so I just write a little bullet and I say intro. And then I'll write, do I want to do a poem? I'll put yes or no. And then I have a standard maybe story that I choose from. And then I'll do a bullet where I'll say, get passionate, throw down. I'll literally make a note to myself I call it a TD, a throwdown, where I just go all in with what I want to say, but not a script. I just want to go all in emotionally and passionately when communicating. So it's more of a style of what I want to do as opposed to a script of what I want to say. And at the end, my last bullet will be like celebration or laughter or joy to remind myself to smile, enjoy the process, and communicate like a holistic human experience.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen those moments in your videos where, while your style is interactive and experiential, that you can just kind of go off and preach. And it's incredible. It's moving. It's inspiring. How do you view kind of placing those moments in the speech?
So I look at it as a journey. So the beginning journey is playful. So my intro is always playful, personality based. I try and that's why I intertwine soccer or poetry, or I do a game or some competition. I like to do something playful in the beginning. And then in the middle, we get real quick. I call it rated R, getting real quick. So that's where I just flip the switch, and I get honest about myself. And then I invite them and challenge them to get honest with themselves. And that's when it gets real. So the middle section is my rated R, rated real. The beginning is playful, and the end is all community based. It's all about how can we as a community move forward and create a culture. So I don't want to say, let's create a unified culture. I'm like, no, we're going to do it. You're going to see how it's done. You're going to learn to celebrate each other. And that is, for me, when they walk out, they're like, I got real. I was playful outside of my comfort zone. And I learned how to build culture all by doing, not by being told. And so for me, I walk away hopefully planting a seed that they actually did it, so they don't need to. Again, it goes back to the experience-based learning approach, where now they have a reference point of, oh, I've been outside of my comfort zone before. Oh, I've gotten to know someone in this room who I would have never spoken to before. I can do that. So those sort of reflections hopefully will continue to guide them the next time they want to open up, celebrate someone in their community, start a club, etc.
Let's talk about the rated R portion, the getting real. Your doctorate is in psychology. So as a speaker, when is something too raw, too real? I've had, things in my life, I go, well, I feel like if I share this on stage right now, I'm still kind of pissed off and bitter about it. I don't have any healthy perspective on it. How do you kind of bifurcate, this is raw and this is real and helpful versus this isn't quite ready to share yet in a helpful way?
That is a great question, especially in the time we live in. I think this goes beyond speaking on a stage with a microphone, because we all carry a microphone in our hands and we have a platform on our social media. So I actually think this is for anyone who is using some kind of voice through social media or stage. I think 100% of the time, I make a joke to some of the students where I'll be like, I don't need you to get real and get up in my face and be like, oh, girl, you look awful today. That's not what I'm talking about, because somehow we kind of think being real is being rude, or being real is just releasing things, right? I had a bad day. I got to talk about it. Kind of what you were saying. I think the biggest step for me is processing it. So it has to go through a process before it is then released. So just because I feel it doesn't mean I need to say it. I have to have a point of peace. If I don't feel peace about it, if I don't have a place where if I think about it, what I want to say, and I'm angry still, or I'm frustrated, and that doesn't mean I'm not passionate, but if it comes from an emotion that hasn't been filtered and processed, then it's not something that I want to contribute to a conversation because I'm still wrestling with it.
And what might that process look like for you? I mean, is that, depending on the issue, might it be therapy? Are we just talking like I need a certain amount of time? So kind of the heat of the situation and my emotions around it can simmer down. What might that process look like for you?
Yeah, so I think in the simplest way I can say it is, it's just being real with how I feel so that I can heal. But if I'm just doing what I feel and not being real with it, because if I'm real with it, I'll recognize, oh, I'm angry. So then I now have to ask myself, what do I need? And then maybe I need to go for a run. Maybe I need to pray it out, yell it out, scream it out. So then that's when it becomes unique to me and my tools that I've developed that are most helpful for me. And this is one of the activities I actually walk through students with, or whoever I'm working with. I say, what were you struggling with? It's 5 questions. It's Dr. J's 5 questions. What were you struggling with? How did you feel? What did you need? Why did you stay silent? And what are you hopeful for? Because hope is scientifically evidence-based. One of the greatest ways we can actually help even prevent suicide is having someone have something that they're hopeful for, identifying a purpose, things of that nature, which is why I end with that approach. Now,
I know that you enjoy boxing as sort of a form of exercise. I was thinking about this because I think back to in my 20s when I was a speaker. I feel like I sometimes viewed myself, and I think this is an immature stance, but I viewed myself almost as like a boxer or like a fighter that was going into a hostile environment of a high school gym with 800 kids sitting on both sides, and that I had to fight them and will them to engage, to lean in, to listen, to be inspired by me. I look back on that, I don't think that's the healthiest mindset. I'm curious for you now, how, like, under what prism or rubric do you kind of view yourself on stage? Is there something like, these are like my nieces and nephews? How do you kind of think of yourself in that position of a speaker?
Well, I am in the same boat as you. When I first started, my very first event, there was actual footage of it. Lord knows where it's at. Thank God. I hope I never find it again.
I will track it down, I assure you. Go ahead.
There is footage of one of my first events, and I played like 2 seconds back, and I was like, I seem so angry. And I just turned it off and I never watched anymore. And I was like, I'm not ever watching footage of myself. But it made me conscientious that that's how I was coming across. And I think I had to learn that the difference between anger and anguish. And I have a very deep conviction that there are lives on the line, and it is essential that there are spaces and the communicators hearing this, the speakers hearing this, the advisors, the educators, that they know how important their work, their voice, their ideas, the space they create for people is, because there are lives on the line. Like every 40 seconds, another life is lost. And there are lives that need their voice, their activities, their presence, their humor. But I think that boils down to really understanding and being comfortable with not trying to be a speaker, but just being yourself. Mm. And for me, go ahead.
No, sorry. Keep going, Julia.
When I tried to be a speaker, I came out as angry because I was trying to do something. I was trying to use speaking as a way to communicate how I felt, as opposed to recognizing the need and just being myself and meeting that need.
Julia, I really resonate with that style because I feel like that's more how I'm wired in terms of that, creating a space holding that space, keeping that space safe for people for transformation to happen, for interaction and transformation. It sounds like kind of a dancer. You come in as this dancer, ready to dance with whoever's there, whoever's willing to dance. And I love that imagery. And I'm also curious, a bit like Josh is asking, what happens when they don't want to dance? Or what does that look like? Or how do you invite them out onto the floor when, those kind of things? It sounds like it comes very naturally to you, but if you were to break it down a little bit, what would that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I use several methods. So I'm not a one-trick pony. That's not the best imagery. I wish this podcast was being video cast.
Yes.
So
horses scare me.
Please throw up a GIF. No, wait, we can't do that. So
we'll have an audio GIF of a pony. And I do just want to note the difference here, GIF and GIF. I mean, our country is divided enough. Must we bring up these sort of heated social topics?
What is the guy's name on Ted Lasso? He's like, I think it's pronounced GIF.
Yes.
So I would say I've had to practice and strategize with different tools, and also recognizing that as a speaker, I am facilitating and controlling the space, but also I'm not just a speaker. I am someone who can, as you were using the dance portion, right? Maybe you're a speaker who is a great dancer. I would say lean into that. That's one of the things. And Josh is showcasing his dance talents. And
he can't not dance. It's in him.
Okay, that's where you insert a beat in that portion.
I am the beat. Go ahead.
So for me, I had to say, what are the things that I like to do to express myself? Because speaking is also a form of expression. Our voice is just one form of it. So I know a lot of speakers use humor. I don't think I'm that funny, but I try. We call them mom-dad jokes. I had a student, I'll sum this up, where I had a student 2 weeks ago, and they were wandering in the auditorium while I was setting up. And they said, are you going to perform? And I was like, should I? What do you think my talent could be? And they were like, well, do you sing? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, do you dance? And I was like, I don't. And are you in a band, play an instrument? Nah, I don't got that talent either. I'm striking out here. And then I was like, I do spoken word poetry. And they're like, can we hear some? And so I spit 30 seconds and they were like, but ultimately, and I'm not saying everyone has to have an artistic talent. I also play soccer with them. You can find whatever it is. But I think ultimately it comes down to using different mediums that you generally would use as a human being to express yourself as a part of your strategy when speaking. Because again, you want to feel most like yourself while you're there. And you want to eliminate trying to be a speaker as much as you can.
Yes, it's such an easy thing to say, such a hard thing to do. I'm really struck by your emotional depth and self-awareness. It makes me curious if you always had this. I find the space of speaking to youth, speaking to students, speaking in the college industry, that attracts a lot of younger people because there's something intriguing about being able to speak to either your peers or kind of being the slightly older brother or slightly older sister. So when you're at that age, you have a high relatability, but often when you're at that age, you have, low emotional maturity, low self-awareness. This self-awareness and emotional depth that you have, is this something you had to develop and grasp with along the way, or is this something from pretty early on you had a sense of?
I think the first time I can trace back to it being acknowledged by adults, I was doing a diversity conference at my school, and we went away to a retreat, and we were supposed to be paired with an advisor to lead groups. And my advisor somehow left, and I was like, well, what am I going to do? And they're like, oh, you're fine. You can lead the group on your own, through topics like racism, homophobia, all of those things. And here I am, like 15 years old, and they were allowing me to lead the group in these discussions. And I was always like coined a team captain. I think a lot of that boils down to my family dynamic and being one of 6 kids, my family setting such an example for other people to maybe come live with us if they needed a place to stay. Or my father ran a youth soccer league all my life. Almost every other person in Phoenix has probably played soccer with me before. And all of it was pro bono. So no one ever paid for anything. And so I just had really early on, I was just had this mentality of serving others. And because I was one of the few people doing it, I think I always was just coined in those leadership positions. And ultimately, through experiences of life and things that I probably shouldn't have seen at a young age, I had a lot of exposure to human emotions of all kinds, be it depression, loss, grief, even joy too. And all of that really just put me in a position to be able to process some of those from an early age to survive.
Mm. Now, I know that you kind of talked about there was a period of your life where you felt kind of hesitant, afraid, maybe bordering on ashamed of sharing your work publicly. Can you talk about that journey and then what sort of eventually pushed you to break free of that?
I would say Josh Shipp has helped.
My
Not
goodness.
just brown nosing here.
I didn't know we were going to turn this into an infomercial.
That is the correct answer. That is the correct answer.
Yes. 800 Josh.
Wrap this up. Wrap this up.
Yeah,
There's your soundbite for the entire podcast.
Yes.
No, but ultimately, I really do believe I always thought it was just an accident that people were so impacted by one of my events. And it just kept happening. And it honestly has never not happened in the hundreds of events I've done. And I just kept thinking, oh, the next one, they'll realize, they'll find me out that I shouldn't be here, that whatever negative thing I could think of. And that'll be my excuse to stop doing this. I was just waiting to stop speaking. I've tried to stop speaking like every year. And TYS came at such a pivotal time for me because I was going to quit. I think I told you this when we first connected. I was like, I'm either quitting or I guess I'm signing with TYS, because I was literally about to stop. And I think for me, it's been a difficult journey to be a woman in the space. I was 19 when I started, so always feeling like I was the youngest in the space. I'm biracial, and I think my style not really fitting in or morphing with an understanding that the industry has. All of those things kind of piling and intersecting together, along with not always getting equal pay to other speakers who I know had either less experience or the same. Different things like that. And then also pursuing my education and feeling like it really actually doesn't matter ultimately to an industry. Like anyone could do this work and there's no qualifications, and all these things added up. And I just started to think, what I do is really weird. I don't know anyone else who does it. It's very vulnerable. I'm always exposed. Boyfriends I've had in the past also think it's weird. And I had to compartmentalize my life in my personal relationships. It was like my work life and then personal relationships. And as a woman, I didn't cross-connect them because I thought it was unattractive what I did. I thought it was, if I told people I was a professional speaker, ultimately, I thought they would think I was trying to be famous, or I was trying to get attention, or it wasn't true actually, and then I didn't want to have to prove it. And so there was all these, I think, insecurities that piled up and ultimately made me feel embarrassed and ashamed to share what I do because it seemed so weird to anything I'd known to be true. And I knew I wasn't a social media influencer type. Like, I wasn't the person who sat in front of a phone and could just be myself. That wasn't me. I needed to be connected to the people in the room to feel like I was being authentic. And so that also didn't fit in the time that we're in. So it was another layer of, you don't fit anywhere here. You should probably just stop. And you're being real weird.
Now, this idea of kind of the different categories that we occupy, you're a believer. I'm a believer. Jesse worships Satan, but he's still a good friend anyway. How have you kind of categorized that part of your life? I've been earnestly a believer, since my mid-20s, but that's never been a part of my public-facing life. For me, it kind of informs how I want to treat people, how I want to operate a business.
You're horrible at.
Thank you. God bless you. Yeah. Screw you. God bless cheek. You. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I only got one more cheek left, so pace yourself. But it was never kind of an outward-facing thing for me. How have you categorized or thought about your faith and your beliefs when you're, often speaking in a college space, which can, gravitate towards kind of the more outlandish the topic, the better? How have you categorized that?
That's one of the most pivotal points of tension, I think, in my personal life. I was actually in ministry for the past 4 years. And it was always a question, sometimes unspoken, sometimes spoken, where I felt that people were wondering why I wasn't publicly declaring my faith when I had a platform. And the people in my community that I was ministering to, I know they all know my heart and they know me. And I was in it for them. But I also have this other ministry that I've had to look at now as a ministry and not compartmentalize it, because that was where the tension was arising, where because it doesn't look and sound, or I don't say the vocabulary that someone in a faith space or a pulpit would say in public I think of it like this. If you go to your doctor, would you be upset that your doctor didn't declare the gospel to all of their clients? But I felt that people were bothered, or maybe it was just me thinking that they were bothered, that I wasn't proclaiming the gospel in the platforms I've been given. But I honest to God believe that God has me outside of the church for a reason. And it's taken me a very long time to be okay with that. But I'm always excited to be able to speak about the gospel and to be able to preach or reach people through the truth that I believe is ultimately that's more powerful than psychology or self-help or anything like that, which I believe is Jesus Christ. But ultimately, my job, my literal job, is to meet people where they're at. And that's a ministry in itself. And it's hard to do that in such a polarized, divisive world. And people don't need to know my faith background to experience the God in me. And I hope that they do experience that, whether they know, like, approve, or whatnot, because that is what drives what I do. That is the foundation of my humanity and what I believe and practice. So
what I hear in that too is less of a splitting, and this is where I do this, and this is where I am this, and much more of an integration. Just like I'm this person inside church walls, outside church walls. Yes, the language might be a little bit different, but I'm still the same person. So I'm drawn to that sense of integration because I know a lot of people struggle with that. and which is part of the church subculture, who's in, who's out kind of thing, that Jesus didn't seem all that concerned about. And not in the same way that we are necessarily. And so it just seems like, that. Do you feel more? You said it was attention. Do you feel more at ease with it now, or do you have people around you saying, "Hey, no, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing"? Do you doubt that?
I think the most helpful thing for me is one, going to the Word of God, but also the people in my life who I believe live out what they believe, and they call out and affirm that in me, and they don't make me feel like I'm doing something wrong. Ultimately, I didn't grow up in the church, so for me, I didn't understand all of the, we'll just call it political things. So I didn't think I was doing something wrong until I started building the church. And that, to me, what is one of the biggest takeaways I've experienced as a believer. In one day, hopefully I'll have more conversations and spaces to have these conversations with fellow Christians, because I think we do a pretty poor job of allowing people their relationship with Christ and their understanding of what they're sent here to do in the unique ways that they're doing it. And it can be outside the church walls, and I actually believe it should be more so.
I think you do a great job of meeting people where they're at, because, I've seen a lot of believers who don't develop, who do a good job of developing their faith, but they, if they're going to go and speak outside of the church, they have nothing other than their faith, which is something maybe outside of the church, folks don't believe in. You have the research, you have the evidence-based methodologies, you have your education. So I feel like you do a great job of saying, look, if you want to talk about, your mental health from a biblical standpoint, we can go there. If you want to talk about your mental health from a practical and psychological standpoint, we can go there as well. I feel like most folks aren't willing to do what you live out so well, which is be ready to have both of those conversations. And that's because of the hard work that you've done to prepare to have either iteration of that conversation.
Thank you. I think ultimately it requires, a willingness to trust that they're on their own journey. And if anyone tried to come at me and tell me what to believe at any point of my life, even today, I'd be like, thank you. I'm going to close the door, because ain't nobody going to tell me what or how to believe. And I'm like, I ain't going to tell you what to believe. This is what I believe if you want to know. This is what's driving me if you want to know. But you're going to know regardless, because you're interacting with me. You're going to know the heart, hopefully, of Jesus. But ultimately, it's not my job to force you to believe or understand. People got to have their own convictions, and we got to trust their journey and their process, because me at 19 was very different than 21, very different than 25. I was less open the younger I was. And as an adult, it's real hard to be a believer these days in such a political landscape. But I have to have my own understanding, and that's really what authorizes me personally to be able to keep doing it the way I do it.
I love that. When I was 22, I think I just lived in California for about a year. So moved out of Oklahoma, was living in California. I don't think I've told you this story, Julia. I got a certified letter from a buddy of mine I went to church with in Oklahoma. And like one of these, you got to sign for the thing, right? I'm like, okay, this is like, what's going on here?
Fancy.
Yes. It was a typed out letter that basically said, hey, I saw the speaking thing you're doing. That's great. You're out there making kids laugh and all of that, but they're not going to be laughing when they're burning in the depths of hell. And I remember at 22, 23, that really crushed me and really made me think, am I making this about myself? Am I going the wrong direction? Am I, should I be listening to this person? Am I making it about me? But looking back, you just go, that's not on me. That's on that guy.
First of all, I'm so sorry that happened because I felt emotional just hearing that. I felt like it was attacking me. And I can't imagine 21? Like in your giving your heart to these kids, that guy has no idea what you've been through to even get you to the point to go on that stage. What we face to just get up there. The last thing we need is to be told how to do it. What are you doing, sir? I would have just replied, okay, I'm sorry. What are you doing? Thanks.
Yes.
I always say, don't take advice from someone who you don't want their life.
That'll preach.
I was told kind of in my first year of ministry, I met a lot of awesome people who were giving their gifts to the church full time. And they would say things like, I would never do this. I would never use my gift for anything other than to glorify God. And then I'd be like, okay, well, what do you think about me then? And I would, again, like you just said, it made you question things. And I think that's a good thing to do, to question things, but not out of judgment, criticism, ridicule. Let's try and stay in your own lane, people. But ultimately, I believe that ain't nobody going to hear the gospel if they ain't alive to hear it. And what we're doing is helping save lives. We're helping keep people alive, not just in a life or death situation. I'm talking like people are on this planet operating, but not truly being present, being real, living passionately, following their dreams, believing they have worth or value. I think all of those things are life or death battles. And it's not just, am I going to take my life? That I mean, when I say life-threatening, and the amount of lives you've impacted, not just through your direct voice and a microphone for all the years you've been speaking, but all the people who you help to use their platforms. I mean, if that's not ministry, I don't know what is.
That's kind of you. Thank you. Let's talk about the lane that you've carved out.
Let's get off of me now and let's go back to you.
That's right. That's right. But thank you for the kind words. Let's talk about the college space. Speaking to K through 12 students or K through 12 educators, that is sort of its own thing with unique challenges, unique circumstances, unique subtleties. But I remember hearing some of the stories you were sharing in Mexico at the TYS annual gathering.
Arriba.
You have such a depth of experience in the college market. Can you kind of start by talking through, what most speakers who want to get into the college market think it is versus what it actually is?
This is for speakers. So I'm going to be very real and transparent with you. It is a circus out there, y'all. Any act is invited. And it is both wonderful because they let me in, but also I think as communicators, we are entrusted with these young, impressionable minds. And I think going into it, not just saying, I'm going to tell my story, is, I believe, critical to the overall health and well-being of these audiences because they are so incredibly vulnerable, and they're at a place where they're actually seeking the next level of education and growth. Whereas younger students, they're still in that forced to be there mentality. And this age level of college and university, they're paying money to be there. They're making sacrifices. Their family is. And so I think it's very important that we recognize we do our due diligence working through our own crap and not just going and using it as a platform to share and to make it a part of our healing journey. Not saying you don't still go through things while you're a speaker. I don't mean that. I just think what I've witnessed a lot, and even myself done, and I'm speaking to my younger self here, is I took my own things, my own issues, and I recognized real quick that I could spew it on an impressionable crowd and they would receive it. Mm-hmm. And so I had to really, that's why I pursued my education, is because I wanted to learn as many tools as I could. That's also why I buckled down. I was like, if I'm going to believe, I'm going to go all in and be a believer, because I just don't think I could do this. But I think knowing what your intention is pivotal in that market, because they're so impressionable. So if it is entertainment and also empowerment, awesome. But I think my younger self, I started because I was doing a book tour, and the audience was that age level because the title was Sex, Drugs, and Alcohol. So it was a little radar for the younger kids. And so it kind of launched me into the college and university market. But what I've witnessed is it is a pretty open, willing to really bring in anyone, act or empowerment or education, but it doesn't do a great job with creating a credibility or accountability. So I think as communicators and speakers, what I would just challenge us all to do is to, and with any audience, with high schoolers as well, this isn't discounting that, but I'm just saying, because it's more of an open market where anyone can go in, it's less strict and stringent I don't know if that's really answering your question, but I think for me, that's how I would describe the college market, as this open to anyone market. And so for us, I think it's important we continue to recognize and take accountability for that responsibility we're entrusted with.
And we'll be right back. Now, back to the show.
Yes, definitely agree. We want to hold a high bar. So some of these speakers you've seen who are, hopefully well-intended, help me parse out kind of what you're saying here. Is it that it's like they have a powerful, raw story or something that's quite entertaining, and then they just never say anything helpful? Or is it that the advice that they're giving is actually more harmful than it is helpful because they perhaps don't have the education or experience background to know what is helpful advice versus not?
I think ultimately it's even my younger self I'm referring to, and what I've witnessed and experienced. But I think it's that a lot of people in this space, because of social media, and again, I'm speaking to my younger self as well, it is about speaking and sharing your story. And what I've done, what I've transferred into now is, how can I create a space where we share stories? And that's the difference. Because when you hear their stories, you're going to realize what you need to do differently or the same as a speaker. But if we're just going to share our stories and not to create a space for other people's lived experiences, then we're just talking heads, and we're not, I don't believe, ultimately creating sustainable impact, because they could YouTube a great voice or speaker or someone who politically aligns to them or will reaffirm things for them or be anti for them, whatever they're anti. So instead of being an echo chamber of just our own lived experience, can we move from sharing a story to creating a space collectively as communicators? And I do think it's extra pivotal and essential in the college and university market because it's so much more open-ended to entertainers, educators, empowerment, all of it.
And talk about some of the kind of uniquenesses business-wise of getting booked in the college market that are perhaps different from, middle schools, high schools, those markets.
I think one of the main things if you're looking to get in the college sector of the speaking space is thinking of things that are clickbait as your program title. It's very trendy. It's very what is going on with the political times. 15 years ago, ain't nobody want my diversity program, okay? I was peddling that thing door to door. Nobody wanted it. No one was opening the door. I was knocking, I was pounding. Nobody would take my diversity program. 3 years ago, they couldn't stop hiring DEI people, right? It's really about the cultural times and the trends. There was someone who I know made a ton of money in the speaking industry during the Iraqi war, and then they were irrelevant and did not evolve with their speaking programs after that. So my speaking programs change all of the time because it's not that the root of what I do or my messaging changes, but the typography and the titles on my programming changes. And that's okay. We don't have to be married to our message. What the goal is to empower, to educate, to inspire, to help save lives. And that is the key. So if I got to change my title every 6 months, I'll do it.
And is that because of who the decision maker is in the college space? In the high school space, it's typically system principal, assistant superintendent. Their calculation is, is this speaker worth risking my reputation to bring in? Is the reason that these sort of things are more kind of what's the trending topic is because this programming is more driven by the students?
Yes, it's driven by the students and the climate, the cultural climate. So the students decide, and then for most situations, I always used to ask, and I still do to an extent, how did you hear about me? And it's usually they saw a video and the students approved. The students saw a video and then the administrator signed off. But sometimes I'll go to events and there will be no adult administrators at the event because it is predominantly student-led space. So if your content, your messaging speaks to the students, specifically the climate that they're currently in, then that would be more of an advantage than someone who's even has like an incredible message and things like that. It's not saying that that's not needed or helpful, but altering it and pivoting it to what the students are going through and needing and what's trending for them is most helpful.
And because it's mainly student-driven, does that mean the idea of a repeat customer becomes trickier in the college space because come 2 or 3 years later, there's a good chance that the person that brought you into Washington State University is no longer there making these sort of programming decisions?
Actually, I've had a really great experience with that. A lot of my clients I've had for 10 years. Because the students then encourage the administrators to come if they did miss. So they're at least there 4 years for the most part. And there is a quick turnaround for the educators in the university space. They're usually only there a limited time, but the recommendations will speak enough for themselves. And it is difficult to sift through a very amazing an amazing variety of speakers and educators for the college university. So the less they kind of have to keep sifting through and just relying on those recommendations, probably the better. So if you can call ahead, make sure you get as many people there who make decisions as possible so that they can experience it themselves. It will pay off ultimately because then that client doesn't have to go back and keep looking for more. But also, in addition to that, repeat booking won't happen unless it's different students each year. for instance, there is a difference between an orientation. You get incoming freshmen or incoming international students as opposed to working with a club at a university. And if you work with a club on the university, they might not be as likely to bring you back the following year, but they might bring you back in 2 years or 3 years. So those relationships aren't invalid, but you might just get the repeat a few years later.
So help me parse this out, Julia. In one aspect, you're saying like the college market is unique, but because there's sort of no gatekeepers, it's kind of a free for all. Like if you want to do it and you can put together a message and market yourself, you can likely perhaps get booked.
If I can do it, you can do it.
Yes.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So you're saying that on one side, but then you're also kind of describing these repeat customers who it's like you're essentially saying like they don't want to have to go do the due diligence of sifting through all the different speakers out there to find someone who's going to be good. Is that something unique about your clients, or help me understand the tension there between the college market can kind of be a free-for-all versus some of these clients who are being very thoughtful and deliberate about the due diligence process?
I think there is an incredible amount of after-hours work that these administrators have in the college university space. I mean, I can't tell you how many times they're on 24/7 alert to their students. They're there for their students 24/7. They're there from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. putting on these events. So ultimately, it's not, I don't think that they don't want to do the due diligence. I think if we can make it easier for them and serve it to them on a platter, the better, because they have so much going on, not just within school hours, but after hours to care for their students. There's so many incidents that happen on dorms. I can't even tell you how many times I've been at a school and something happened in real time and the advisor had to leave. So I think that landscape is really that they're ultimately available to the students pretty much around the clock, which makes it more difficult for them to be able to sift through an amazing sea of speaker choices.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about speakers' agencies. I think to a lot of speakers, they have a variety.
TYS is the worst.
Well, yes, it's again. The point of this is I'm not trying to plug that, but
for the listener, TYS is Top Youth Speakers. No, yes. I'm not trying to rub it in, but we've said it a few times, but haven't parsed that out yet. So anyway.
Yes, thank you for correcting my vernacular there. I've seen a lot of speakers have a lot of definitions of what they think an agency could do for them or how an agency would be helpful. Without naming names, we of course want to be thoughtful and respectful. Can you talk through maybe some of the myths, some of the frustrating experiences you've had, some of the good experiences you've had, and then for you today, sitting where you're at today, how you view an agency, I mean, our agency, yes, TYS, as sort of a partner in your impact in business.
I will throw myself on the bus first. The first probably 5 years of my speaking career, I was the agent, not just for myself, but for an entire speaking group. That meant I paid for and designed the flyers myself. I once threw a soccer tournament just to raise money to have a website for us. I didn't even know what a speaker was, and I was training them. I was building my own little agency, not knowing what I was doing. I just knew that kids would relate to people who weren't me only. So I was like, the more people, the better, because that gives kids more opportunities to connect with more people. That was my thought. So here I am, 19, 20 years old, peddling my little programs and my little speaking crew. We got up to like 15 at some point. We had rappers, we had poets, we had actors, we had dancers. And what I realized is it's not very cost effective to have multiple presenters or speakers travel. So we did primarily local things, but at the time, if we got $30, it was a win.
Y'all would go out as like a duet or trio of speakers?
We'd have 5 to 10 on the roster every time. And in between each of our lecture points, we had an art component. So we would have rappers or poets or a skit. And then that would open up the next segment of what a speaker would talk about. And everything we did was based on like a real experience. So it was like original content for songs, all of that. And ultimately we saw so that was my starting point, was being a part of a speaking crew that I organized, led, built the business for. And as I mentioned earlier, nobody wanted my diversity program. And then they started wanting bullying. And then there was this evidence-based research that said using the word bullying is bad. So then it was pro language. And so then I learned a little bit early on how to adjust to the language and the climate that a client would want. But I also learned about how awful the back end of things can be for a person like myself. So organizing invoices, following up on them. I mean, the number one feedback my team always had for me was, can you please be more organized? And so I realized very early on that this was not a gift I had, to organize an entire back end of a speaking business. Thank you for any agent who has worked with me for helping me with that. But when I landed my first agents, I just showed up at an event and I was like, what? I just show up? This is amazing. It got to a point where I didn't even know where I was going. My husband would be like, where are you flying to tomorrow? I'm like, I don't know. I got to be at the airport this time. This is where I'm going. He's like, what program are you doing? I'm like, I don't even know, but I know it's going to be awesome. So I maybe took a step back too much because I had been a little bit, I went the extreme of doing everything. So then I was like, I ain't doing nothing. I'm just showing up and doing me. So I think that there's a lot of back-end information, a lot of back-end work that speakers who are in this space know, that agencies can really come around you and partner with you. Where I don't think you need an agency if you're making a certain amount of money that you're happy with, you enjoy that back end stuff. And something that TYS actually says better than I'll say, so you can probably clarify this, is if you really enjoy doing the business, you probably don't want an agency. That's not going to work out well. I hated it. I was the worst at it. My clients suffered, my team suffered, everybody suffered because I should not be doing the invoices. I would do everything for free if I was in the back end, honestly. I would just be like, oh, we don't need to follow up with this client. It was a great event. It's okay. I'll just pick up a double shift at the bar tomorrow.
I'll host another soccer tournament.
Yes.
This is very interesting to me because I guess my experience is sort of the inverse, that, I feel like I was born to be an agent or to build an agency, but I had to be my first client. I feel like I was born with a gifting and a talent for the business side of speaking, all that back end stuff. But I had to go through kind of the sheer grit and determination to become a decent to pretty good speaker and learn the business side along the way. I see a lot of speakers who can get hung up on the idea of like, yeah, but if I work with an agency, I'm giving away 20 or 30% of the income to each gig. But then if you really parse it out, you go, but it's draining like 80% of your energy and your desire to do this thing. So, I guess to add my own kind of piece to this, being on the agent side of it, there are no doubt folks out there who love and are energized by the business side of things. I think that's probably 15 to 20% of speakers out there. And that was kind of me. It's like when I would get burnout on the speaking side, it's like I could kind of go and be in a cave and nerd out on like the business stuff. And that would kind of
PowerPoints.
Yes. My slides, my graphs. And that would kind of help me restore my energy for the extroverted activities I would be doing in the coming weeks, going out to speaking events. And then when I would get too much in the business details, you can lose track of why you're really doing this. Like, yes, you want to make a living speaking, and you can make a handsome living speaking. But if the primary goal is money, it's like there are 1,000 other jobs that have a clearer, cleaner path to making large amounts of money.
And they're less embarrassing for people like me.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that comment, but very well. And so, I think for that other 85% of speakers, if they can put themselves in a situation where when they're not traveling, they can either A, be recharging, be spending time with family if they have a family, taking that time to recharge, self-care, all of that, or B, be working on the next thing, be fine-tuning either the current speech, working on the next speech, writing the next book, creating the next thing, because, an agent or really kind of anyone could book a gig, but that next speech idea, that next book, that podcast, that project, whatever that is, that can only be birthed from the talent. That can only be birthed from the speaker. So how do you view kind of, zooming out on your landscape now, this is what TYS does, sure, but like because of that, here's what I'm going to focus on and double down on.
Yeah, I think there's a rhythm that you were speaking about that pertains to family, personal time, also looking at yourself as an artist or innovator. I don't think anyone gets into this space with just the gift of speaking. I think you have a lot of capacity to help in different ways as well. And when you have room for that, I've been able to build apps. I've been able to build a crisis line. I've been able to write books. I've been able to help organizations build their brands. And I've been able to build bias tools. I've been able to basically take my son like so many places around the world and have quality time with my family. So there's a rhythm that you are allocated when you're not all consuming every area of the business. And an agency like TYS is unlocking you to have a life that's not just speaking invoices and making sure all of the business and back end things are taken care of so that you can have an intentional life that you want to build from your speaking. So my speaking unlocked my listening to an audience who said they were struggling with body image because of social media. So that then, because I wasn't doing the business side of speaking, I had time to develop and build from scratch an entire mobile application for young girls directly responding to what they were saying about social media. So I'm not sure if that answers your question entirely, but ultimately there's a rhythm of a speaker's life that will be unlocked that allows you to pursue all of the things you're passionate about. I had a therapist when I first started going into the college speaking space. I was just about to publish my book. For the first time, I was freaking out. I mean, I was going to light all the bookstores on fire. I was freaking out. So I hired a therapist to help me not do anything irrational and crazy.
Not commit larceny.
Yes, exactly.
Good call. Good call.
Yes. And he kept saying the same thing over and over. He said, Julia, what is the purpose of the book? So I would go on my little tangent and then he would just calmly say, Julia, what is the purpose of the book? And what I realized through this annoying exercise of answering this question was just to help someone. And he would say, the book is just one way you're going to do that. Your speaking is another way you're going to do that. You being kind to someone at Walmart, y'all, is another way you're going to do that. So it allows and unlocks the opportunity to do more things and pursue different avenues and passions to help people. Because if you're listening to this, you're probably someone who's in the business of helping people.
Mm-hmm. Without naming names, can you talk about some of the frustrating experiences you've had with agencies? And, maybe that would be helpful as a tool for speakers who are considering agencies, things to be cautious of, things to look out for, or just expectations that you need to right size when you're working with an agency?
I think agencies that I've worked with or been friends with through just the networking, one of the best and upsides is it's very family feeling. Like a lot of people are very they're all in it for the right reasons. People are very kind. It's a great place. But I'll start with myself. The worst part about me as an agent, not that I knew I was an agent until later. I realized that was an industry and that's what I was doing. I think one of the things to steer away from is if you don't believe in that person you're representing. And I didn't believe in myself. I believed in my crew and my team that I was representing. But when it came to my solo speaking events, I was like, I ain't going to sell this. I'm going to sell all of us every time. And I think ultimately, as I grew older and continued in this space, sometimes I would struggle with feeling believed in fully and truly because I don't want to make it about this every time I talk, but it is not hard to notice that there are no women on rosters in speaking agencies across the globe. And if they are, they're super famous or they're in a female empowerment space. Or maybe they're just starting out, which is great too, which is what we're hopefully moving more towards. But I think ultimately it's hard for me to believe in myself as it is. So if I don't have that belief from my representation, whether I'm representing myself or whatever, it's ultimately not worth it because you will do the job and look at it as a job. You will not have that fire that got you started. You will not be able to sustain your work as a speaker. Maybe you're getting events, but you're actually not still passionate like you were in the beginning. And that's also what I mean when I talk about sustainability is you could probably do your job really well for a long time and make good money, but are you a person that you want to be while doing it? And are you as passionate for what you're doing and why you're doing it? And I think that's the larger goal is staying really connected. And I think representation in agencies, one of their jobs, whether they know it or not, is that to remind us who we are, why we uniquely need to be doing this. And when it's in an industry like it is now, where you're one of the only ones, say a woman, say a biracial woman, say it your age range, say any kind of identifying factor, maybe it's your style that you use, you almost need a little bit more of a reminder because you're looking at this landscape saying, I don't belong here.
Mm. Yeah, there's no question there's a need for greater female representation in the speaking space, particularly, corporate education, all of it. Let's say there's another Julia listening to this. She might be in her 20s, she might be in her 40s, she might be in her 60s, but she knows, she has a message, she wants to be helpful, she wants to serve an audience. What would you caution her on and what advice would you give to her?
Ooh, girl, let's talk. I would say don't try to be Julia. Don't try to be Bob. Don't try to be Josh, Jesse, Miranda. I don't know. Don't try to be me. Get really good at being you. And when you can lock in, I'm going to be me, whether I'm in front of 5,000 people or 2 people, when you can agree and do the hard work to stay your authentic self and stay passionate, you're never going to look at this industry as something that you can or can't do. It's just a matter of that's not the issue. It's can I be me while doing it? Because I don't want to be changed by this landscape. And that's the temptation. The temptation is, I should alter this style so I can sound less intense and passionate, because a woman's not supposed to use the tones I use or be as or use the style and approach. It's too risky. It's too unsafe. I shouldn't be saying the words rape. I will start diluting who I am and why I started doing this, which is ultimately like prevention and helping save lives, if I try and be like other people. So as a woman, we just need you to be you unapologetically, and find the people who can rally and encourage you to stay you. So I got a core group of like 3 or 4 people who will remind me of who I am and why I'm doing this when I start to get overwhelmed in the sea of, I'm up against these incredible, mostly male speakers. They're way more talented than I am. They're way more funny. They get the respect right away without having to earn it. And I could get very deeply overwhelmed. And I just have to remember, like, there's got to be another girl out there, or even young man or whoever, who needs someone who's going to be real, regardless of my identity. And so I just try and be real. And I encourage you to be yourself, because ultimately I don't want to just be brought in because I'm a woman speaker, or because I'm biracial, or because I have a doctorate degree, or because I do spoken word poetry, or because I have blue eyes, or have awesome lipstick all of the time. I want to be brought in because you recognize in this world there is a need for someone to create a space where people are seen, heard, and can be connected. And I just enable that to happen. And I'm a tool that schools, educators, organizations have to make that happen. And it is all of our privilege to be able to do that for our clients. And so if you're listening to this and you want to be a speaker or a communicator, or and you are the only brown person, you are the only Asian person, I would say your difference is what will enable you to make a difference in the space.
Agreed. You talk a lot about kind of, being you. How do we close that gap between, the person I am if I was sitting with my nephew at Starbucks versus the person I think I need to be when I step on a stage in front of 500 nephews? It's no doubt speaking, it's like you do need to bring kind of a larger version of your true self, or a more intentional. I don't even know if I agree with what I'm saying, but perhaps it does require a bit of kind of being bigger because the stakes are a little higher. But how do we close that gap? I mean, I found I struggled with that for so long. It's like the guy I really wasn't the guy up there yet. He was it's like 60% me, but it wasn't fully. How do we close that gap as speakers? I find any speaker I think is phenomenal. Any speaker, and there's variety of genders, variety of ages, variety of styles. Some are like preachers, some are like academics. The only through line I can see is like she's 100% comfortable in her skin. He's 100% comfortable in his own skin. And they bring their quirks, their weaknesses, their uniquenesses, their strengths, their brilliances, the things they're not, like they bring all of that to bear. But how do we do that?
You do it in your personal life. I lived a double life in my personal life. I remember I was dancing on a bar around a pole. It was my job, okay? And I looked at the door and I saw this woman who I thought was a parent or educator of one of the students I had worked with in the daytime during my other life as a speaker. And I remember thinking to myself, what would they think? I'm speaking to their kids during the day and then I'm wrapped around this pole at night, right? And then about a week later, I did an event at this high school, a couple thousand kids with my crew. Then I go out to pizza with my mom afterwards, and the pizza's late coming out. So my mom goes to complain. I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is mortifying. And then I look up and the girl she's talking to is crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did my mother make this poor employee cry? And then they start walking to me and I'm like, okay, I'm freaking out. Like, is this my long lost sister? Like what's going on? Why is this girl crying? And she comes up to me and she just says, can I have a hug? This young girl who works at the pizza place, and she's crying. My mom's next to her. And I'm very confused. And my mom clarified that she had seen me speak earlier in the day and that I was her hero. And so I had this one experience where I'm dancing on a bar. And then the next week, I had this young girl crying at a pizza place telling me I'm her hero. So I had to start processing then this dichotomy of living two different lives, where one, I'm okay and used to having attention if it was at the expense of maybe my self-worth and what I thought was survival at the time. And then I had to, this is a very foreign experience to be acknowledged for my mind and my voice and who I am as a person and the vulnerability and the stories I shared with this person. And the attention could have been the same amount, but the one I connected to more, which was also uncomfortable, was the young girl who said I was her hero because of the realness in the story I shared. So that for me marked the beginning of having to do my due diligence and recognize I got to be who I am all of the time. And that's why it's less difficult to do it on a stage, because I've done the hard work to figure out how can I be me regardless of if I'm in a church setting, if I'm at a pizza place, if I'm at a bar. I ain't dancing around the pole anymore. I'm not saying you don't have to, but for me, that was something I chose at that moment that wasn't going to be a part of my expression of who I was and the choices I was going to make, because it was taking away from me spending time writing a book. It wasn't aligned with the goals I had for who I wanted to be. And so I would say taking that all back is getting more comfortable in your skin on the stage, is figuring out how to do that and showing up for real in your marriage, in your relationship with your kid. I say it all the time. I don't want my kid to think I'm perfect. I just want to know that he knows who I was. So he's going to see my personality and he's not always going to like it. He tells me I embarrass him all the time.
That is your job as a parent.
I just don't get paid for it.
That's okay. Dr. Julia Garcia, this was glorious. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you for your time, sharing your experiences, and your deep, deep emotional thoughtfulness. Very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Julia.
Thank you for having me. And keep reaching, speaking, and teaching.
How
out there.
How can folks find out about your work and whatever glorious projects you're up to next?
Y'all pray for me to get a book deal. Okay, we're going to put that out there. I would like, I'm trying to launch my own live events, podcast, and book all this year called Everything I'm Afraid to Say with Dr. J. So look out for that. You can find me on my socials, any updates, my website, Sincerely Dr. J. And also, any booking, go to tys.com/Dr. Julia Garcia.
We don't actually own tys.com, but I wish we would. Yeah, I've tried to buy it. It is literally like a six-figure number. It is a mid six-figure number.
Okay, what about? Oh yeah, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Man.
Say it out loud.
.net.
.biz.
Club.
TYS.biz.
Awesome.
/ crypto / Julia / FTX.
Julia with 2 O's. No.
Maybe that is another sign that it's going to be top speakers somehow.
I know. Yes.
Don't know.
This was glorious.
Thank you, Jesse, for organizing everything.
Oh, thanks, Julia, so much for making the space and the time. And yeah, so good to just hear from you, learn from you. And I'm excited for what you're doing.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to have these conversations because, when you're coming up, it's like folks don't have access to Mexico or those sorts of environments where you're around other people that get it. Like you were saying, I mean, you had baggage around speaking because you weren't quite ready to own that part of your giftedness yet. But there's also this unique thing of like, this is such a weird, unique business that is very visible, but so few people do or do well. And so to be able to have these conversations about the ins and outs, the psychology, you're out there inspiring people, but you're also like doubting yourself in the midst of it, all of that.
That's a great line. Did anyone catch that?
What did I say?
He borrowed that from me.
Stop it. What did I say?
You're empowering others, but doubting yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That is the epitome of, I think, the space right there.
Yes.
And there's no one to tell you you're doing it right. That's my biggest problem. It's like I would look at the door and be like, someone's going to come in here and say, you're not allowed to say that, or you said that wrong, or that's not correct. It's like no one is saying, they're just saying that was awesome. You're like, wait, but like anything else? Like that one line I said, or, like you don't have, there's no process to even know what you're producing is good.
Yeah. 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 And the metrics that are available tend to be vanity metrics. You can measure, okay, did I get a standing ovation or not? Like how much of the room clapped when I said that thing, or what percentage of the room laughed when I said those things. But those are superficial. It doesn't measure the depth of the impact that you're making, which is often a quiet moment only for that person.
And sometimes takes days or weeks to process for them.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
I stopped doing Q&As because everyone just kept asking me where I got my shoes or my blazer or who did my hair or where I got my lipstick. And I'm like, wait a minute. We just we were all just crying 30 seconds ago.
Right.
Like, what? So I stopped doing Q&As.
So many speakers are. This is now part 2 of the show. We're going to get our third. We're going to get our third episode in right now. I was guilty of this for many years, and I see a lot of up and coming speakers. If you got a good joke or something, that's fun because immediately if it works, you get an audible response that reinforces like, okay, I'm not dying up here. This is going well. They're into it. And there's nothing wrong with that, unless you overindulge in it for yourself. But a lot of speakers are uncomfortable with creating a vulnerable, quiet moment and letting that just sit there and not trying to rescue it or move on too quickly with a joke or with being humorous.
Letting it do its thing.
How do you muster up the courage to let those moments just breathe?
I think it's recognizing why we do that, which is we live in a saturated environment of entertainment, engagement, and the discomfort of silence and processing because we lack the ability to process, reflect, because we're constantly engaged. So for me, that's what frames how I approach it, is I recognize there's a bigger, broader problem of we are constantly engaged and we don't feel things very much. We don't allow ourselves the time, the space to feel, reflect, pause, think through, be uncomfortable. The biggest word I would say is discomfort. And if you're comfortable on stage with a bunch of kids, there's a problem. You should be a little uncomfortable. They should be uncomfortable. We all need to be a little uncomfortable because this is weird, this dynamic, right? And it's that discomfort that we have to pay attention to because that's where we can see what's really going on. There's nervous energy. There's the looks in the room. But that's also where release happens.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to pause long enough for a release, a reflection, and practice ourselves being uncomfortable in a space so that we also know what they're going through. And we can develop more strategies to navigate it and appreciate them.
Let's say you're a speaker who has a gift of being funny. I like numbers and percentages and pie charts. So let's say that is like a really unique gift you have as a speaker. What percentage would you challenge someone like, hey, 30% of your speech should be funny, but the rest should either be like raw, real, vulnerable, or thoughtful advice or hearing from them? Could you give like a range of a percentage where you feel like you're honoring this really unique skill set or gift that you have, but you're also, you're not a comedian. That's not what you're there to do. So you're also using it as a tool, not a crutch.
Ooh, that's good. That's good because I think I relied too much on my poetry in the beginning because I thought I had nothing to say.
Yeah.
And shocker, I hated telling my story. And I had a fellow speaker who's been my speaking partner. We started the True Crew, so he's like family to me, but he would always, at the end of an event, be like, Chica, you got to tell your story. You need at least more than 3 minutes to tell your story, Chica. Like, that's the real part, and you keep ignoring it. I mean, year after year, Chica, you're not being real. Chica, you're not being honest. Like, you're not telling the bad, dirty stuff. And I think I was relying on the crutch of a gifting or something I thought could be an escape from just being what they needed, which was being real, right? And our talents and gifts, I know you want percentages, but
come on, I will push you for a percentage. I'm going to push you for a percentage.
Okay,
you say your vague words, and then I will push you for a precise percentage.
So here's why I can't give a percentage, because I've worked in prisons and I've worked in schools and I've worked with educators, and I'll go in thinking I'm going to do this. And then I'll get there. I'll be like, they're responding to just me free flowing right now. Like, I'm just going to go all in on this. Or I can get into the crowd and literally just start talking to one person. Like, I have to be open to the possibility that my plan is not what they need. But doesn't mean your percentages can't come in intentionally. So if I were to intentionally go in
Don't do it.
with a plan.
Don't do it. You're giving him what he wants.
Let's look at it like a blood sugar range. At what point do I need to visit the doc? At what point am I indulging too much?
I think if it's what the people want, give them what they want. I ultimately would say my art side of my events are roughly 10% now, but they were a good 40% before, 40% before. I now use them as just an enhancement and not a core component.
So if someone's north of 25%, would you say, hey, think critically about that if you're overindulging?
I think you're falling into the entertainer category, which is fine. That's a whole category in itself, right? I know a lot of people who are entertainers who intertwine an empowering message, but I think you're leaning more in that realm, and maybe it's pursuing a creative pursuit as opposed to a content and space pursuit.
Yeah, keeping it as that tool. I feel like viewing that, for example, humor as a tool. Well, you could use that tool however and whenever you need to, but it's serving this kind of this greater thing. Maybe it's warming up the crowd at one point, and then you're using that humor to make a point at one point, and then you're just letting it hang. I feel like, Josh, you're so good at that kind of thing. Exactly. See, that's my point. You just made it for me.
It's great.
I was trying to hold the moment.
We held it.
Good job, everyone. I
Thank
feel
you,
very
Dr. J.
uncomfortable.
Thank you. This is great.
All these
Discomfort achieved.
Psychology freaks guy here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys again.
This was great.
Thanks,
Thank
Elaine.
you. You were super helpful.